Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversational Witchcraft with me, Dawn, the Kitchen Witch. Before we get going today, this is your daily reminder to make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you really love what we're doing, you can now support us by clicking the support us link. And for those of you who are supporting us right now, we appreciate you more than you realize. You're helping us keep bringing you some great information and inspiration and conversations. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, the share button, hit all the buttons and support us if you can. We appreciate you. And don't forget, you can visit me directly and learn more about me and food magic and the power of kitchen witchcraft by visiting me directly at cucinaaurora.com. Okay, so today we have the amazing Awyn Dawn. I'm really excited to invite her because she is coming to us all the way from London. Awyn is a pagan high priestess who has been working with spiritual seekers for nearly 10 years. She has a BS in integrative healthcare from MSU-Denver and an MFA in creative writing from City University of London. She's a Reiki II attuned healer, the author of Paganism for Prisoners and Paganism on Parole. Awyn is also a member of the Society of Authors and the Royal Society of Literature. Awyn, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. That's quite the intro. I'm like, wow, that's good. That's impressive.
When you read it all out loud, right? Like when you write it down,
Yeah.
you're like, oh God, this just feels so weird to write. And then you hear it and you're like, oh my God, did I do those things? You really did those things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's surreal. It's still surreal all these years later, but
It's so cool because you've written two books and now you have your third upcoming, but you
yes.
have this really impressive, like non-pagan lineage. Like I love to talk to people who have like you're in integrative medicine and literature and stuff like that. And I love to find out how that background kind of intersects with your spiritual self.
Well, I mean, my spiritual self kind of it intersects with everything.
Right.
Like it's not something that okay, during the Sabbaths I'm pagan and then the rest of the time I'm something else. Like it's really there's no way to separate them. The books I write, like some of them are obviously pagan, but some of them aren't. Like I'm working on my first work of literary fiction right now while I'm finishing up my master's. And it has nothing to do with magic, but it's still got this transformational, powerful, raw honesty to it. And I think that's something that kind of carries through. Um, so it's not moments I can pick and choose. And and I think we kind of limit ourselves with what like we expect pagans to be.
Mm.
Like, okay, if you're pagan, you have to, you have to have the dyed hair, you have to, dress like it's the 1960s, or it has to be all black, or it has to be this, or it has to be that, and a lot of pagans do that, and that's great and that's awesome. But like for a lot of us, for me, you know, it's so much part of who I am, it doesn't matter how I decorate the outside.
Mm.
Everything is just it's all connected. So eh, everything I do and I pray I have conversations with the gods and Freya. I talk to Freya a lot because she's very no nonsense and
Hmm.
tells me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
Yeah.
So it links in everywhere, really. And the integrative healthcare aspect actually was very helpful in writing my first two books,
Hmm.
um, because it's kind of where allopathic and holistic medicine meet. So sometimes you do need a doctor,
Yeah.
but you should also be eating right and going on walks and preventative care. Like it's
Right.
not one or the other.
Right. It's wellness. It's about
Yeah,
wellness. So,
yeah.
like, how did you always have a pagan path, or was that something you found early on in your life, or is that something you found as you started kind of growing as an individual, as a young person?
Well, so it's interesting because I was baptized twice. One Southern Baptist, one Presbyterian. Neither one of them took hold, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. There was it's obviously two different sides of the family, wanted me baptized in two different ways. But when I was a teenager, I found my first book on witchcraft. It came to me, and I still don't know how I wound up with that book. It just like showed up one day,
Wow.
and um, I'd always I'd always been interested in like the Greek gods, and I would spend my time reading, mythology, and I always asked myself, where did they go? Like, why don't we believe this anymore? Like, what happened?
Mm.
And I didn't know until I found that book, that other people still believed in the old gods. And I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. And it was very much this coming home moment.
Yeah.
And it was always there, but like early on, it was very superficial for me. You know, I I became a witch during the era of the craft and practical magic and all
90s witches.
90s
Oh.
witches. And so I had I dressed all in black for a while, and like wore the biggest pentagram I could. So
To
they
be like,
used
I am witch.
I am witch. Yes. And I just luckily I didn't give up on it. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people that you get out of something what you put into it. So if you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out of it. And so I think some people abandon witchcraft, they abandon paganism, but I never did. And so it grew much beyond that and much deeper
Well,
over the
yeah,
years.
especially around that time, right? I mean, and I think we see it now, right? Because cottage core is that aesthetic that people are doing. And it's like, well, are you a witch? No, I just like this look. And in the 90s, it was like, oh, I watched The Craft 5 times and I'm a witch. And I'm gonna wear all black and but and I'm gonna shop at Hot Topic, but it was an aesthetic, right?
Hmm.
It was an aesthetic. It wasn't people those not everybody was digging in and going, oh, wait, this is real. I want to go back to something that you said before about how like where are the old gods? How come, why don't we believe in this anymore? And I think that is an inherently people are going to write into me and say nasty things, but I think it's an inherently American society thing because in America, there's just everything is very whitewashed, very Christian, very, very, I mean, I was raised in such a Catholic, traditional Italian Catholic family. And there were two possibilities when I was growing up. You were either Catholic or Jewish. That was it. There were no other religions. You didn't talk about any other religions, any other spiritual paths. I think that when you go to places in the world where old gods were worshipped, where different gods were worshipped, the echoes of them are very present in the architecture, in the language, in the folk magic. I don't
Hmm.
think that we see that a lot in our country. Would you agree, especially now that you've lived in two places?
Um, I mean, yes and no. There are still very I mean, there is still a lot of like, Christian, washing over the land, but yeah, you do see it in place names, and there's a certain sacredness of the chalice well, for example,
Mm,
and people up in arms because the chalice well recently removed their goddess statue, the mother and child statue. And even on the churches here, you see things like gargoyles and green men, and like Canterbury is full of green men.
mhm.
Like everywhere you look, there's these little green men in the stones. And yeah, and I think there's just even though it's still like primarily Christian, it's kind of different. It's it's different, especially in a place like London where I live, because there's so many different faiths. Like I could probably go outside and meet somebody who's Baha'i, and somebody who's Hindu, and somebody who's this, and somebody who's that,
Yeah.
and somebody who's insert whatever faith here. And I don't know, I haven't been fortunate enough to go to Greece yet to see if anybody there like still has shrines. But when I was in Catalonia, they still had like this cultural reverence for the past that I
Mm,
don't think we get in America. Same thing in Scotland, it's very, tradition and the past and lineage and history.
Yeah.
And these are things that, because we're so young in America, we don't have
Yes.
this. We're like preteens in America, and the rest of the
Hmm.
world is like, in its 30s or 40s comparatively, because they, um, just as far as like the written history view, because
Yeah.
obviously we know there were people in America before, but like our view, like as a whole world global,
Hmm.
America's very, very young.
Hmm. So for you, it was the cultural and the pop cultural influences of things like the craft and practical magic and this book. Do you remember the book that you
I,
found?
I do. It was To Ride a Silver
Silver
Broomstick on
Broomstick.
Silver. Yes. Who didn't have that book?
And again, like where did it come from? I don't know. It just showed up, right? Like such a magical book for us 90s kids.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Do you still have your copy?
I have a copy. It's not my original copy that I had, but I do still, it has the cover that I had with the purple cover, and she's on the broom.
She's on the broom.
And it's so iconic, yeah, and it was like, until that moment, I had no idea that anybody still
Mhm.
believed like any of the stuff that I felt was right. Like, I
Mm.
felt it was right that, like, you know, I pay homage to Zeus. Well, actually more Hera, as I learned. But we get introduced to the gods as like this ancient historical like factoid, like, oh, can you believe what the Egyptians used to believe? Can you believe what the Greeks used to believe? Oh, we
Right.
know they used to believe in this because we've dug it up and we put it in a
Mhm.
museum. But there was so much more to it,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
like it's amazing. There's still a very strong druid tradition over here in the
Yeah.
British Isles, and
Yeah.
it just like
It's
it's
just it's palatable there, right?
yeah.
The old ways are palatable. So even though you have kind of like a layer of Christian ideals over things, due to, colonization, blah, blah. But the those other things are so much, like you said, they're so much more present. And I feel like here, if there is something different, or if you're not, one of the specific, accepted religions, then you are immediately othered. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of us, as pagans and witches, and when I talk to people that live in the UK or live abroad, they say they feel much more comfortable being open about their practices. Do you feel similarly?
I, I mean, I don't, it's not the kind of thing like, when I meet somebody, I'm like, hi, I'm pagan, you know, um, I wouldn't ever feel worried about it. I have gotten some strange looks when it's come up, like, oh, okay. Like, and I haven't figured out why that is. But I will say that there's one less degree of separation, right? Like, if you're following Celtic gods or you're following Norse gods, like, I live in a place where they were, where they are, where they've always existed.
Right.
Whereas if you're following Norse gods from California, like, they made it pretty far, but I don't think they ever made it to California, And so you don't have that same vibrational connection. You
Yeah.
have this layer of separation that it's going to alter your understanding and your interaction. And it,
Mm.
it it just is. It sucks, but it's true.
Yeah.
You know, uh, just like if I was working with, Hindu gods and I'm not in India, I would have that same experience, so it makes a difference.
So is this one of the things that drew you to move out to London, or what brought you there? And how has it changed your life and your spiritual practice?
So I came out here to write. Some of the best writers in the world have been British or, English or from this area. And I was like, it must be something in the air or the water. I'm gonna go get a bunch of both. And that's what brought me out here. And um, I fell in love. It was love at first sight. So if for anybody who's never lived in Colorado, Colorado rains for like 2 weeks out of the year, we get like really intense rain, and the rest of the time it's either sunny or snow. Those are your options. That's what it is. And here there's, there's rain, and I'm such a pluviophile. I love rainstorms. And it's interesting because like when I first came, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go out with my umbrella. And now, like, if it's not a downpour, I'm just like walking in the rain. And so I think one of the ways that my practice has changed is I'm out a lot more. Like London has so many green spaces. Like there's a green space, there's a green space, there's a green space, there's a green space. Like some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger, but you have all these green spaces. Nature is built into the city. It has been allowed to exist. There's a place I go do my shopping at sometimes, and there's a little um you go down this path and there's this little bug haven. Yeah, they have like little rocks, and they're like, okay, you can't pick up these rocks because of this, but these rocks you can pick up, but be careful because they're going to go quick. And they have like little bee nests, and it's just like this little bugtopia in the middle of London, just so that they have this little sanctuary. And that's actually inspiring an upcoming book I just signed a contract on. But
That's amazing. Congratulations.
yeah,
But it's also the reverence for nature that
yeah.
the people that live there have, which is inherently pagan.
Yeah, and well, and it's interesting when you look at the history, because where I live used to be like the king's hunting grounds, like a couple hundred years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, like kings have probably have walked, in the places where I've walked, and I find that history so amazing because I'm a history nerd.
Right.
European history is like my thing. And just to think that, through all these transformations, nature has always been here and magic has always been here. Because like people think that what happened is when Christianity started to grow, that paganism just vanished one day.
Mm,
And it didn't happen like that. It's
no,
been
no.
slow and gradual, and even like midwifery up until, the 18 the 1900s.
Yeah.
um the maypole dance, until the 60s. So like these things have always been here. They've been trickled in. You can't really get rid of them. You can just disguise them and make them something else, but they're still here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see it so very clearly where you are. So when did you go out there? Did you write your first two books when you were out there, or you wrote those here?
No, I'm actually so I'm a bit of an overachiever. I wrote my first two books while I was finishing my undergrad. While I was in Colorado during COVID. My first book I wrote during COVID. My second one was like 2021, 2022-ish. Um, and then this one, my new one, I wrote while working on my postgrad because I like to stay insanely busy. And so this one I started it in the US, but I finished it out here. And
Amazing.
yeah, and I think it's helped change like my understanding. Like I've become a lot braver.
How do you mean?
Just like in the US there's black and white, there's for or against, there's left and right, there's up and down, there's all this either or.
Mm,
And since moving out here, I've learned to look at the nuance between the either or, and that's made me a lot stronger in my practice. It's made me able to consider the tough questions, which is what I hope my readers will do in 111 Magic, is consider the tough questions.
I love that so much. All right, let's take a quick break. Because I really want to dive into the new book, 111 Magic. I want to talk about your journey in writing this book particularly. And so we'll be right back on Conversational Witchcraft with Awyn Dawn. We are back on Conversational Witchcraft with Awyn Dawn. And we were just talking about how different our places that we live are during the break, because people are so different. Like
Mhm.
people where I live in Southern New Hampshire are just very nice. Listen, everywhere you go, you're gonna have your selection of assholes, right? But
Right.
for the most part, people are considerate and respectful, and it's it's just awesome that you have that sort of culture of everyone is considerate where you are in London.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's unspoken rules, and I came here, um it's actually weird because I've heard from a lot of people that Britain is becoming more Americanized than it used to be. They're
Because
like, oh,
everybody's getting the hell out of here.
everybody's moving away from America. And I came here, I'm like, well, I want to become more British. I don't want to make Britain more American. I want to become more British.
Yeah.
And I can only do so much, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are just, you can't even explain the cultural differences in just
Yeah.
oh no, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. Like when getting on the bus. And it's just
Everybody's
it
polite. Like,
I mean, I wouldn't say everybody, but a good portion of people are polite and funny. A lot of funny people.
really funny. My okay,
Don't piss them off. Don't
last thing, I promise. Then we'll totally get into your book. My friend, my very good friend, she's also my assistant. She's booked herself a trip to London. And it's her first trip abroad. And she's going on this like tour of London by herself. And she's so excited. She's like, every time I talk to her, she's like, okay, so this is, I researched this and this is where I'm going for my trip. And
oh,
she's just so excited. And to hear you talk about it, she keeps telling me, she's like, I'm never coming home. Right. And I'm like, I was like, Jeannie, you have to come home. And she's like, maybe we just, I'll just work remotely for you from there. And I was like, you have to come home. You have to come home. But
and
I think the possibility of wanting to stay there is very real.
I came for a visit in 2021, right after, as soon as visitors were allowed.
Yeah.
I came, and I didn't even stay in London proper. I stayed in one of the boroughs because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm moving here, and tell her to just one evening to just walk the Thames. Just pick a side, go up one side, walk, cross a bridge, and come back down. It's the most amazing experience.
I
Just
will absolutely tell her. In fact, when we're done with this interview, I'm going to text her and I'm going to say, Gina, you have to. She said, walk the Thames. But
walk the Thames.
let's get back to this. Let's get back to this. So, Awyn Dawn, your new book is 111 Magic, right? And the subtext is spells, rituals, and meditations to reclaim your power. Let's talk about reclaiming power for a second. In your opinion, why have most of us lost our power?
Well, we're very sick, aren't we? I mean, there's not one cause.
Mhm.
It'd be easy to be, it's this thing. As long as we get rid of that, then it's good. But it's a lot of things that contribute. I think social media has had a big toll. And I have social media accounts. I'm not no social media. I'm not anti-social media, but everything in moderation. I think when it becomes more your life, then that's a problem.
Mm.
And, I think we've lost the ability to have conversations about difficult topics,
Mm.
and that's really toxic. It's I don't care if people agree with me or disagree with me, we should be able to sit down and have a conversation without hating each other. And we've lost that. And that's, and I think part of that is because we've lost that ability within ourselves to have difficult conversations with ourselves.
Mm.
If you can't admit to yourself your flaws, how do you ever expect to grow? If
Yeah.
you can't say, wow, you know what, I'm really judgmental. Oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
was really wow, I should fix that. But we don't
Right.
do that anymore. And social media, among other things, has allowed us to, put on a facade. this, oh my God, this is what I want you to see. And so this is reality and this is what you're going to believe. And you never meet these people, right? You've got hundreds of thousands of followers that you never meet. So whatever you put out there, that's what they're going to believe. That's what they're going to expect. And then we begin to believe it,
Mm.
and yeah, I'll be the first to say I have had some shit in my past.
Yeah.
I've had some stuff that I'm not proud of, but I can't change it, but I own it, you know, and
Yes.
and that's what we don't do anymore. We pretend that like if you woke up and you said something really nasty to your mom or your sibling or a stranger on the street that they deserved it. There's a reason that you were just being an ass.
Mhm.
Own that you were being an ass.
Yeah. And that's not power. That's not your inner power. Your inner power and your inner light, that's peace, acceptance,
Yeah.
joy, comfort. That comes from you and you alone. And it's not like, right, you being an asshole to somebody else doesn't make you powerful. You being
No.
combative doesn't make you powerful.
But
You
neither
say,
does
right, it's
being
not
meek.
right, right. It's just so that idea of people have lost their power because you believe they've lost their own voices, is that
A lot of it, and we're afraid, right? Like I don't like why are we so afraid of social media? Like, God, oh my God, I'm gonna get it's not real, right?
I don't
Twitter,
think
Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, they're not real places.
right,
You could just put down your phone and they don't exist anymore.
right.
Like, don't be so afraid. Like, just say the thing that you want to say. It'll probably piss people off. I have a lot of views that would probably piss a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
But like, I think we need to stop being afraid. And we need to stop being like, that person doesn't agree on all 103 things I agree with. So I can't like them anymore.
Mhm. I also think that there's people have confused because of social media. And I think that we've had this bubble, right? And I think it happened because of COVID. I think that part and parcel, right? Is that we were locked in our houses with nothing to do or
Mm-hmm.
nothing easy to do because a lot of us started baking bread and homesteading or playing games or connecting with our loved ones.
It's
Crazy, crazy.
weird.
So weird to talk to the people you live with, but a lot of other people went internal and kind of dug themselves into this fear spiral, and social
Yeah.
media really helped them to do that, right? And within that you've lost your power because you no longer trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big difference between I disagree with people on, this thing and that thing versus my moral code does not allow me to participate in this thing. But we think all opinions fall into that, like you said at the very beginning of this conversation. Here in America, there's a lot of black and white, like left and right, yes and no, all or nothing. But there's so much gray area, right? I can sit down and have a conversation with a person that I disagree with. I can't sit down and have a conversation with somebody who wants to, kill me for being myself or just vehemently hates me for who I am. And I don't need to argue with that person. My power is saying, you're entitled to feel however you want to feel. And I don't fucking care. Right. And letting that go. Would you agree?
For the most part, although I do enjoy the conversations with people who hate me. I think that's so good. Mwah. Just oh my God.
So you're like inner Disney villain, right? Like
I would totally be a Disney villain.
so would
If I had
I.
superpowers, I'm a villain. I'm not a hero.
Totally, totally. I saw that great meme that was like, I used to think I was Cinderella. Now I realize I'm this lady. And it's Cinderella's stepmother in the bed with her cats, petting her cats. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's me 100%. But this idea of regaining our power, we need to discuss the ideas of why we've lost it and where does it go? And does it happen as witches and pagans? Does that, or as spiritual practitioners, like you said, but regardless of what we believe in, have we given it away, or has it been taken from us?
Mm. I think I'd have to think on that one. Like intuitively, I don't think you can that somebody can take it. I think you have to, part of you has to volunteer it away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be some like, yes, okay, if you're, forced into situations where you experience trauma, maybe some of your power was taken then. But I think overall, like we're willing participants.
Mm-hmm.
Like who hasn't, and I'm guilty of this too, right? Because I'm not a perfect person. Like who hasn't been like, oh yeah, we're getting an angry mob going, yeah, let's jump on this
Mm-hmm.
bandwagon. Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
who hasn't gotten a little dopamine fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
we've all done it. There's no use in pretending we haven't. I try not to. I try to be aware of it, but it happens, right?
Right.
And so like we're willing participants. We know that what we see on social media and we present, if we're getting honest with ourselves, we know it's a load of crap most of the time. We know we're only picking and choosing what we put on there, and I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't recommend putting everything on social media, right? Like, because that's a whole other problem. But like we have to know that it's not the real world. It's not like there is no post or number of likes, or like when you see those, oh, if you really like me, you'll, share this post. I'm never sharing that post. No, you can't emotionally manipulate me like that. No.
Yeah, no, definitely not through social media. You can't,
Yeah.
manipulate me. No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So like just it's okay to have a little fun with it, but I mean, we need to get real about some things. Like there is a tangible world.
yeah.
There's a tangible world, and we live in this tangible world, and it's not pretty all the time. It's uncomfortable, and stuff happens, and
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the growth process. Hate to tell you, but if your life is comfortable, you're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Your life is supposed to be uncomfortable because that's how you grow.
And healing is growth, right? So you've written this book, 110, was 111 Magic, um, Reclaiming Your Power. It's a healing book. It's
It
a
is.
book about how to pick up the broken pieces of yourself and put them back together, either. And I think that's the other part of it. When you put yourself back together, it never looks the same as it did before it was broken.
No, and that sounds cliche, but it's true.
It's so fucking true. If
Yeah.
anybody has experienced any kind of tragedy or transformative process, if you've been through a terrible breakup or had to move or lost somebody or whatever, you got fired from a job, every single time you have to pick yourself up, you look different when you put yourself back together. Your
Ah,
life looks different when you put yourself back together. I want to ask you a really personal question. Okay.
okay. All right.
A book like this, in
Mm-hmm.
my humble opinion, is written by someone who needed this book when they were going through something really hard. Was that you? And if it
Oh,
was, could you share that with us?
yeah. It's actually all my books have this common healing element, right? Like my first two are for incarcerated, pagans, and this one is for, you know, everybody, including, but not limited to, um, those people. So yeah, no, my whole life has been let's just say I've grown a lot in my years, in my decades. I have grown a significant amount. I had the father who went to prison when I was little, pretty girls, bad things happen to us because
Because
sadly,
people
like
suck.
because people suck. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish that part wasn't true. Like that
Mm-hmm.
should not be part of the growth process.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is.
And let's make a caveat there. If you have been traumatized by someone else, if you've been victimized by someone else, it is not your fault.
No,
It
no,
is
that growth
not your
isn't
fault.
about fault.
Never about fault.
It's not, no, it's not about fault. I mean, like some growth things you can take accountability for, like
Sure.
because of my path, because of the things I experienced, I have a background in addiction, and then incarceration. And so all these things, like until about the age of 30 something, my life is just one big like pile of shit, basically. Like there were good points, but it was really bad for a really
Yeah,
long time. And some parts of it, I had my part to play. Like
absolutely.
I think it's important, like, I wasn't just an innocent victim all the time. Like I did some stuff too,
You made
but
choices. You made
I made
choices.
choices. But there are some parts that weren't my choice and that I didn't have any control over. Right. And so both can be true at the same time. Like you can
Absolutely.
have bad things happen to you and still make bad choices. You can,
Hmm.
it's not just, oh, I'm a victim. Nothing I did is my fault. Like that doesn't work. So when writing this book, I really thought about my own period of growth. And it's crazy because since I finished this book, I finished it takes about a year to publish a book. So I finished it like a year ago.
Hmm.
Um, and in that year, like I've also reached this other big period of change in my life. So I wrote this like starting easy, starting like, okay, let's make your safe space and let's okay, and now we're gonna get into the work. We're gonna talk a little bit about shielding. Okay, we're gonna do a little bit of this, a little bit of
Hmm.
that. And as you progress, like anybody who reads this, the spells and meditations get harder
Hmm.
as you go. And that's intentional. Like if I had started with like some of the meditations that are in here at the very beginning,
Yeah.
it would be a little much. But I really just tried to think about my journey. And let me say, I am not done growing by a long shot. Okay. Not even close. Okay. Even with all the growth I've already experienced, like who
Hmm.
knows what I'll look like in 5 years. But
Hmm.
um I tried to think about what I needed and what other people might need and what I see in society in the world and those kind of things and put them in a book because I believe if people start doing the work to heal themselves, like yeah, we cannot change the world if we are sick.
Yes. Say it again. We cannot change the world if we
If we
are
are
sick.
sick. So we have to get healthy, you
Right. And
know?
that's everything. That's
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like you can't just be like, I go to the gym every day. I'm super healthy. No, man, you haven't been to therapy ever.
Mhm.
You don't believe in anything and you're eating crap. Just because you work out every day doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah. It's
Right.
kind of like it's kind of like that. There's this belief that like if you're vegetarian or vegan, like you're necessarily healthy. You might be, but you might also eat, I don't know, are Twinkies vegan? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Like Twinkies. Like I knew a vegan who ate nothing but potato chips.
Yeah, see, okay, so that's one of those things where
Yeah.
like we're kind of telling ourselves we have this idea in our head, like, oh, I'm vegan, I'm healthy, but not if you're eating potato chips.
Like
Like,
not if that's your only source of sustenance. Right.
right. Like if you have a varied diet,
Hmm.
completely different thing. So
Yeah.
like going through this, I just tried to think about like stepping stones and I also really wanted people to challenge themselves. Like there's one of my favorite I forget if it's a meditation or a spell, but it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm. Oh, so important.
It's one of my favorites because like like we have air conditioning, we
Yep.
have fans, we have heating, we have, a bazillion different types of clothes we can wear, we can drive places, we can walk places. Like we're very comfortable as a species right now,
Hmm.
more so than any other time in the history of the world. Like we have dishwashers, we have all these things to make us comfortable. So if you're not uncomfortable sometimes, like I think that weakens you. It's like I do this comparison because of all the things that I've gone through in my life. If I got a flat tire, I'm gonna be upset about it. It's gonna suck, but I'm gonna change the tire and I'm gonna get on with my day. If you're to a point where a flat tire ruins your whole day or your whole week, you probably don't get uncomfortable enough. And so I want
Yes.
people to like it's okay to be uncomfortable. I promise. I promise
Yes.
It's okay to be a little chilly. It's okay for people to say things that like you don't really want to hear. Like that's okay. You'll
Yeah.
survive. You're tougher than you think you are.
I think that is such an important message, no matter what you believe in or what gods you pray to or, whatever. I think that idea of being uncomfortable and understanding that discomfort helps you grow, right,
Mhm.
is so important. I think that's why people stay away from things like, therapy, or they stay away from things like, doing shadow work, because they are like, oh, no, I love and light, love and light, love and light. And like,
Mhm.
even in your witchcraft, like pushing boundaries is how you grow. I just want to say before we continue, thank you for being so frank and honest about your own journey. And B, someone coming at this type of spiritual magical work from your perspective with your background, I think is incredibly helpful, because I think there are people out there that struggle with things like addiction or have been through, real shit in terms of, maybe abuse or assault or situations like that. And they go, "Oh, the writer of this book or the person I'm watching on YouTube, they don't really understand where I'm coming from. They don't,
Mm.
they don't get me." Well, that might be fine for them, but it doesn't work for me because I've been through all of this. And the truth is, we all have trauma and we all have things that we wish we could change in our past. But what you have said and what you have done is you have said, I have had shit happen to me. I have made bad choices, and I take responsibility for myself in those situations and how I choose to move forward. That we were talking about before about being, taking back power.
Yeah.
That is how we take back our power, right? Is we say,
Okay.
I choose to not go to pieces because I got a fucking flat tire. Yeah, it sucks. Deal with it. But
Yeah.
I'm going to take control of myself and responsibility for my emotions and say, it's going to be okay. I can get through this.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to
Yeah.
commend you on that, because not everybody is able to kind of dig themselves out of that victim mentality. And you have, through magic. I mean,
Well,
that's incredible.
I mean, thank you, but I mean, it's not really necessary to like commend me on it. It's just what I did, and if I can do it, anybody can do it because there's nothing particularly special or amazing about me other than I'm honest with myself, in ways that were very uncomfortable, so it like I think it's actually funny because we're talking about, how comfortable people are. And I think people are very comfortable, in their repeated cycles, in their,
Mm.
cycles of addiction, in their cycles of incarceration, in their cycle of dating that same guy.
Mm,
Not that I would
mm.
know.
Or
Uh,
getting that same job or having that same argument.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and, and we're very comfortable because we know what to expect.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if it's horrible, even if you fight every day with somebody, there's a comfortability in it, we're such an odd species like that.
Well, yeah. If you've never known love for the sake of love, or you've never known, no one's ever given you respect, then when you're given respect, you feel very uncomfortable and you go, I don't
Mm.
deserve this. I'm going to self sabotage this because I obviously don't deserve it. And I'm going to go back to being treated like garbage because that's what I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's um and like it, it takes work to like I want people to know that if they read my book that let's say you did every single exercise in it exactly in order, you're not done. Just so we're
Just,
very clear,
yeah.
okay? It's not gonna fix 100% of your problems. It
Yeah.
is not the end all be all book of, spiritual self-help, but it will give you a good starting point,
Yeah.
for to continue your growth, so just keep that in mind because we don't we don't get to be done growing.
We do not get to be done growing. We don't. We don't. When you grow, when you stop growing, you die, whether it's emotionally or spiritually, you stagnate, and then that's it for you, So if you want to keep being a better person, keep growing, keep being uncomfortable.
Or
One of the
become a
things
supervillain.
or become a supervillain, that's fine. one of the things I really like that you talk about, and it is one of the simplest things, is the safe space, right?
Mm.
It's one of the first things, it's one of the simplest things. Can you talk to us a little bit about if someone is listening to this right now and going, I don't even know what a safe space is, how would I create that for myself? And why is that so important as one of those first steps?
Well, and there's a couple of reasons. So what I see a lot is, people who are like, oh, we're working on this thing. We're going to grow spiritually, me and this other person. Right. And with as well intentioned as that may be, you can only work on yourself. You can only be responsible for yourself. And if you tie your growth into the growth of somebody else, one of you is going to be held back, or both of you are going to be held back. So making a safe space is important because you need time. Okay, even if like you live in a house and there's, you've got 10 kids and a husband you need to feed and there's 14 dogs running around and there's chickens outside and you live next to a highway, and how are you supposed to grow in that? Like, how are you supposed to give yourself the attention to grow in that? If you can set aside 10 minutes in the bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Safe space, it doesn't always equal quiet space, but a lot of times it does. If you're in a space where you can just be by yourself and it's relatively quiet, that's usually a good indicator that a space is safe. If you are in a physically dangerous space, please get yourself out of that space before you start on this journey. Like if you are in a place, where you have a spouse who physically abuses you or, withholds food or does any horrible thing, I'm not even gonna speak. If they do that, please get yourself out of that space and then worry about working on your spiritual growth. Okay. And you know, it it's important because if we don't have that space, we can only give so much attention to the work.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm trying to meditate and I've got, Mom, when is dinner ready? Hey, can I go over to Billy's house? Have you seen my socks? Like it's great stuff. It's that stuff doesn't make it less safe. Your kid's asking you for stuff, but you have to have a private space where you can do the work. Right. So don't think safe space is the opposite of like a harmful space, because it might not be. It might just be that it's very chaotic and there's a lot going on and you have
Mm-hmm.
lots of loved ones. You're very lucky to have those loved ones. And, and that part's great, but you still need a space that's yours to work on this.
Right. To have a moment to breathe, to have
Mhm.
quiet, to listen to your own inner voice, like you
Yes.
said, even if it's in the bathroom, right? Like,
For your car.
or your car, right? You get home from work and before you go into the house, turn off your engine and sit there for 5 minutes,
Yes.
right? Take 5 minutes longer in the shower,
Yes.
right? And just be present. Just be quiet. Sometimes for me, it's 3 extra deep breaths, which doesn't even equal 30 seconds, but that makes a difference.
But do not be surprised if your cat tries to come into your safe space and like sit on your shoulder. It does not make it any less safe. They're doing cat things.
You must have cats.
I don't currently because I can't where I live, but it's like very first thing when I move in a few months, I'm like, cat.
Yeah, yeah, no, my cats are always all over me. I have to close the door if I'm meditating or doing yoga because both of them, and they're giant 20-pound black cats. They will
Oh,
come and they will be like, "Oh, mama's on the yoga mat. Oh, we're gonna help. We're gonna help. And now we're gonna rub against you." And they want to participate in that safe space, which I guess they are, right? I mean, they're gonna gravitate towards where the energy feels good. So if you're
yeah.
creating an energy field that feels really good, they're gonna come, right?
Yeah.
Right? I love it.
Yeah.
Awyn Dawn, you're kind of awesome. I'm
Thank
just
you.
gonna say that
Feel the
I've
same way.
really, really enjoyed our conversation today. And you're really very, you're very cool person, but you're also very, you're just, I don't know. I can't think of, I want to use the word enigmatic, but I think that's the wrong word. You're full of life. And I can tell from just having this conversation that you're a person who's been through some shit and come out the other side. And although you said there's nothing extraordinary about you, I think that's extraordinary. I know a lot of people that have walked through the fire and it's not easy.
No.
Right. And I have an immense respect for anybody that has taken responsibility in their healing journey. And I'm very impressed by your healing journey. So, and thank you, because you could have made different choices that could have landed you somewhere else. We wouldn't be speaking now. And that's
Yeah.
a big deal.
And I could have kept making the same choices, and that would have
Right.
been really bad.
Right. And you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
having this conversation. You wouldn't be helping people by putting out books like 111
I
Magic.
wouldn't be in London, that's for sure.
Right, right. So tell everybody where they can find your amazing books, how to follow you on the dreaded social media, and how to contact you, if they want to.
So I do have a website that I updated once 6 months ago. But it does go to me. Like if you contact me through that page, I will get it. It does still function. So that's awyndawn.com. AWYNDAWN. My books are available from Llewellyn. It comes out August. Comes out in August.
So at the
Unless you're
time of airing, this is available everywhere.
Yeah, at the time of airing, you will be able to get this at Llewellyn. I always say shop small. So if you have a local metaphysical bookstore, please go in and ask them. If they don't have it, I'm sure they would love to order it for you.
Hmm.
Because we need to keep those small businesses alive.
Yes.
Um, you know, Atlantis Bookshop here in London will be carrying it. Shout out to Geraldine. Just wanted to say that.
Atlantis Bookshop.
And all the places, the dreaded Amazon and Barnes and Noble, you should be able to order it through there, and all the places. So
All the places.
and social media. So at Awyn Dawn on Instagram, and I'm still on X, Twitter, Twixer. I'm still on Twixer.
Twixer.
I'm still on Twixer. Just because I don't like change. I'm like, I'm already on there. I'm just gonna keep it. So at Awyn Dawn on Instagram and Twixer, and at Awyn Dawn official on Facebook. It's a long story as to why that is, but that's what it is.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where you can find me. I don't
Excellent.
at some point there might be like a YouTube page, or I don't know, but for right now, that's it.
And we'll put all those links on our show notes. So if anybody wants to go over and click and buy the book, you should, because she's amazing. Okay. Last question. I ask this to everyone that comes on the show. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay. I'm a kitchen witch.
Okay.
So if you could have me make you one magical meal, what would it be and why?
Magical cheesecake.
Magical cheesecake. So cheese is all about joy. It's about nurturing joy, bringing joy to others, filling ourselves up with nurturing, think like the joy between divine mother energy and us as her little human babies, right? Like that sort of joyful connection. But at the same time, I feel like you need something a little extra. So I feel like you need like a blackberry swirl.
Yeah, and I was thinking something savory, because normally I go savory, but like cheesecake with blackberry swirl sounds
Right? Like decadence.
just in the bathtub, with
That's our safe space. Bathtub, cheesecake, glass of wine. We're good.
oh, delish.
I love it so much. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Awyn Dawn, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your really inspirational story, and your amazing work. You're going to help a lot of people with this book.
Thank you.
So,
I hope so, but like really they're gonna I just wrote it. They still have to do the work. Like you
yeah,
still got to I'm sorry, I didn't do the work for you.
you have to do the work. You
You
have to
have
do
to
the
do the
work.
work.
Thank you so, so much for being here. Thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of Conversational Witchcraft. And until next time, I wish you so many blessings and so much gratitude.